Today I shall be discussing the features of each part of the alimentary tract separately. The entire digestive tract, as you know, has four layers. From lumen outwards, if we go, then it's the mucosa, submucosa, muscularis externa, and the outermost is the serosa or adventitia. In the first slide, here we can see the epithelium is stratified squamous epithelium. Because it is multiple layered, as you can see, and there is a deep purple colored border at the bottom of the epithelium. It can be seen irrespective of how low the magnification is. So whenever you see the epithelium, um, like where you can see a deep border, purple border at the bottom, then you can go it with the uh, stratified squamous epithelium. And stratified squamous epithelium, as you know, along the alimentary tract, it's only is in the esophagus, where there is some wear and tear due to the food particles, and also in the last part, where there is the last part of the anal canal, where it is the friction of the feces. So when we are seeing alimentary tract in the section, like with the lumen, four layers, and we see the epithelium to be stratified squamous, of course non-keratinized, then we will surely go with the esophagus. The stomach, small intestine and large intestine, they all have foldings or ridges in the epithelium. Now in case of the stomach, you will find the ridges are short. In the small intestine, the ridges are deep, giving rise to large finger-like structures called the villi. They are just at the top of the epithelium. I have already mentioned that the stratified squamous epithelium will be identified by a dark purple border at the bottom of the epithelium. The lamina propria here doesn't encroach into the epithelium. That is beneath it, okay? And then lies underneath it is the indistinct, very thin, indistinct muscularis mucosa. Outside the muscularis mucosa, we will find there is the submucosa, and after the submucosa, we will get onto the inner circular and outer longitudinal layer. In the submucosa, you often find mucous glands, and then coming to the muscularis externa, where we will find the inner circular and outer longitudinal muscles. The muscles here varies along the length of the esophagus, unlike any other part of the alimentary tract. In the other parts, you will find that the muscle here will be smooth muscle, but in case of esophagus, in the upper part, in the upper third, we find there is the skeletal muscle. It is because of the need for the voluntary act of the swallowing. Voluntary act of swallowing has to be done by skeletal muscles, because skeletal is voluntary muscle. In the middle third, we will find a mixture of both the skeletal muscle and the smooth muscle, and in the lower part we will find the smooth muscle only. So outside the muscle layer, we will also find another layer, the fourth layer, that is the adventitia. So here we are not finding serosa, we are talking about adventitia. What is adventitia? It is a connective tissue layer which is supporting the esophagus against the posterior body wall, and this is because the peritoneum is absent in case of esophagus. So here it is supported by the connective tissue layer. Now we come to the next part, that is the stomach. Now, unlike esophagus, the epithelium here is simple columnar. The ridges are formed, and from there the gastric pits start as the opening, and finally the crypts get inside into the lamina propria, forming the glands, gastric glands. At the mouth of the pit are the parietal cells. As you go down, you will find the chief cells, and near the bottom, you will find the enteroendocrine cells. So the parietal cells, as you know, they are secreting the HCl and the Cassell's intrinsic factor. The chief cells are mainly for the production of the pepsinogen, that is for the protein digestion, and the enteroendocrine cells are for the secretion of the gastrin. Now, as the epithelium and lamina propria are intermingled with each other, that is, the epithelium descends down till the bottom of the lamina propria with its glands, and we cannot see a definite layer of lamina propria. So, all along the length of the lamina propria, the epithelium has descended as the gastric glands, crypts containing the gastric glands. So we don't find a distinct layer of the lamina propria. And at the bottom of the lamina propria, we can see a thin layer of muscularis mucosa. One important feature of this epithelium that is in the stomach, that though like the rest of the tract we find simple columnar epithelium, we do not find somehow any secretory cells called the goblet cells here. So goblet cells are typically absent in stomach. They are in plenty all along the small intestine and so more in the large intestine. Then after the mucosa, we have got the submucosa, where we hardly see any glands. As we have mentioned in the esophagus, that there are some glands in the submucosa. So that will be also found in the duodenum, we will see next. But in the submucosa of the stomach, we hardly find any glands. Okay. The muscularis externa, then we come into the muscularis externa outside the submucosa. It is made up of smooth muscles, as I've said, and arranged in layers. And the layers, as all along the alimentary tract, it is the circular, inner circular, and outer longitudinal. But in addition to that, within the circular muscle layer, there is another third layer, that is the oblique layer. So oblique muscle layer is present only in case of stomach, but I doubt whether you can distinctly find that difference with the circular muscle. So if you see circular, it means two layers, circular and longitudinal in the muscularis externa, you don't rule out stomach. You go by the epithelium, you go by the gastric pits, you go by the gastric glands in the lamina propria. No mucous glands in the submucosa. No, there's goblet cells in the epithelium, and the epithelium has simple columnar, but the ridges are small, and the mucosa layer is quite bigger than the submucosa. So these are all in favor of stomach rather than you concentrate on seeing the oblique muscle layer. So you can neglect that part, but for all theoretical purposes, you must know that there are three layers in the muscularis externa of the stomach. The outermost layer is the serosa. Why serosa? Because you know the stomach is a peritoneal organ and it is covered by peritoneum, which allows its easy movement. It's a mobile organ. Now we come to the next part, that is the small intestine. In the small intestine, you see long finger-like structures in the epithelial part. So these long finger-like structures are called villi. So these are the ridges, same foldings that we are finding in case of stomach also, where they are somehow very short. So here the ridges are quite long, giving rise to finger-like structures, as you can see in all the slides here. And epithelium is same, that is a simple columnar epithelium, and at the base of the villi, where the epithelium dips downwards, intestinal crypts are formed, just like the gastric pits that were formed in case of stomach. So here intestinal crypts are formed. The upper or luminal border of the surface cells of the epithelium, that is the a simple columnar, it's a simple columnar epithelium, so they have got a upper or the luminal aspect of the cell membrane. They take so many foldings into the lumen, projecting into the lumen, and these foldings give rise to microvilli. The only purpose for that is that gives you increased surface area for absorption of the nutrients. So these projections are called microvilli. They are so arranged over the epithelium that gives you an impression of a brush border. So this is called brush bordered cells or brush bordered epithelium. Now, if we look closer again into this epithelium, what we see that there are some modified cells which appear as white all along, and these cells are the goblet cells which are opening on the lumen. So these are in plenty over here, these goblet cells. So, what are the specialties we find here? We find that the cells have a brush border because of the formation of the microvilli on the luminal aspect of the cells, and also we have specialized mucus secreting columnar cells all along, and these are called the goblet cells. So, in the small intestine, in the epithelium, what we see is the long ridges or the deep ridges leading to formation of long finger-like structures called the villi. The surface of the epithelium, which is simple columnar, gives rise to microvilli, which appears to be brush bordered, and finally we also see that there are plenty of mucus secreting cells opening on the luminal side, and these are called the goblet cells. They appear white under the microscope. Here we see that the lamina propria has extended within this villi. The muscularis mucosae forms a prominent thin layer of muscle here. As you can see that these are the villi and the intestinal glands all along the lamina propria, and the at the bottom of the lamina propria we find a distinct layer of the muscularis mucosae. In the submucous part, you see plenty of glands. In the submucosa, which lies beneath the mucosa, you see plenty of glands here. And these glands are so prominent in the duodenum mainly, and they are called the Brunner's glands. Beneath that, or outside this submucosa, we have got the muscle layer, and that is in two layers, the inner circular, outer longitudinal. And instead of the serosa, here we can see that there is adventitia or the connective tissue layer. This area, I would rather say, is the ileum, because it is filled with Pierce patches. It is the lymphatic follicles in the submucosal part. And ileum is the ileum has got the highest quantity of Pierce patches. Here we will find that the same villi are present all along. In the duodenum, in the submucosa, we will mainly find the glands, though glands in the jejunum and ileum are not absolutely absent. The size of the villi gradually decrease as we go down. However, the amount of goblet cells start increasing, and the lymphatic follicles or the Pierce patches go on increasing as we go down. So size and number of villi decrease, but what increases are the number of goblet cells and the Pierce patches. Lastly, we come to the large intestine. Here also we find the same four layers, but in the mucosa we see that the ridges are again stunted like in the stomach, but they're very orderly arranged. Here also we will find plenty of goblet cells. If we see under high power, here you can see that there are plenty of goblet cells all along the epithelium, and this is the submucosa. There is of course the muscularis mucosa beneath, and in the submucosa you see, compare the length of the submucosa with the mucosa. Here the submucosa is larger than the mucosa generally, unlike the stomach and the small intestines. And then there are of course the outer muscle layers, that is the muscularis externa, which is inner circular and outer longitudinal layers. The outermost layer will be serosa or adventitia based on the location, like the ascending and descending colons. They are retroperitoneal, so they will be surrounded by adventitia. And in case of, especially on the posterior aspect, and in case of transverse colon, sigmoid colon, they are more covered with peritoneum, so the outermost layer will be serosa. So that is all about the different parts. Hope you have understood by this time the differentiating points between them. If you go through the pictures, compare them side by side, it will be easier for you. For example, here you can see the first picture. Here we have shown some glands in the submucosa, and the epithelium is definitely stratified squamous because it has got a deep purple layer at the bottom with stunted ridges, and also there will be multiple layers of cells all along the epithelium. So that's esophagus. In case of stomach, we have the villi or the ridges which are stunted, not very long, and they have got the lamina propria intruding into, and there are plenty of sections of glands which are the gastric glands in the lamina propria, followed by a thin layer of muscularis mucosae. And the epithelium is surely simple columnar epithelium, so it's the stomach. In case of the small intestine, we can see the large sections of the villi along with the goblet cells. There is the thin muscularis mucosae with the submucosa, and this one is a small intestine which is ileum. Ileum because there are plenty of Pierce patches here. Finally, there is the large intestine where the ridges are there but very stunted, and the entire length of the mucosa is less than the submucosa. There are plenty of goblet cells all along the epithelium.